The year is 2025. The world watches as fire and smoke fill the Middle Eastern sky. Missiles streak across the night, air raid sirens wail in Iranian cities. American and allied bases brace for retaliation. This is no proxy war but a direct confrontation. At the center, Donald J. Trump, now in his second, non-consecutive term as president. Every decision is scrutinized, every statement parsed for meaning. The White House frames the conflict as preemption, a rogue regime on the verge of nuclear weapons, leaving the U.S. no choice but to act. Critics see a familiar pattern. Justifications echoing past interventions that led to years of instability. The stakes are global. The conflict threatens to spill over borders, destabilize energy markets, and unleash new waves of human suffering. The path to this moment was paved with broken agreements and escalating rhetoric. To understand how we arrived here, we must look back at the decisions that set the region ablaze. To understand the 2025 crisis, rewind to 2018 and the Iran nuclear deal, or JCPOA. The deal curbed Iran's nuclear program in exchange for lifting sanctions, a diplomatic victory, if imperfect. President Trump saw it as dangerously lenient, failing to address Iran's missiles or regional proxies. In May 2018, he withdrew the U.S. from the deal, reimposing harsh sanctions and launching a maximum pressure campaign. The goal forced Iran back to the table for a tougher agreement. Europe tried to salvage the deal, but without U.S. support, it unraveled. Iran's economy collapsed. Public unrest grew. Feeling cornered, Iran began openly violating the deal, enriching uranium, stockpiling, and advancing centrifuges. Each step was a calculated escalation, signaling defiance. The diplomatic off-ramp was gone. Both nations were now on a collision course, with sanctions and rhetoric fueling the fire. The seeds of today's crisis were sown in these choices. Tensions exploded in January 2020 with the U.S. drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, Iran's top general. The Trump administration called it a defensive move to stop imminent attacks. Iran's response was swift missile strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq, causing traumatic injuries but avoiding fatalities. The world braced for war, but Trump chose new sanctions over further military escalation. The Soleimani strike shattered hopes for diplomacy. For Iran, it was an act of war and humiliation. The cycle of escalation was set. Direct military action became normalized. The events of 2020 didn't start a war, but they made the 2025 conflict feel inevitable. The precedent was clear. Red lines had been crossed. Any remaining trust was gone. The region braced for the next, bigger confrontation. The world watched, knowing the stakes had just risen. The fuse was lit. In early 2025, Trump's rhetoric hardened. Intelligence briefings warned Iran was weeks from nuclear capability. Operation Desert Sun began. U.S. and allies launched airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites, Natanz, Arak, Fordow. The administration called it a surgical, defensive strike to prevent a nuclear Iran. Iran's retaliation was immediate and fierce. Missiles hit U.S. bases and Saudi oil facilities. Proxy forces attacked across the region. Global energy markets panicked. The conflict escalated far beyond the initial strikes. Leaked intelligence later revealed ambiguity. No consensus Iran was building a bomb, just that it sought leverage. Critics accused the administration of cherry-picking intelligence to justify war. Was this preemption or a war of choice? The debate raged as the region burned. The limited strike had become a regional conflagration. The world questioned the true threat. The cost was already immense. U.S. policy toward Iran was shaped by Trump's close alliance with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu saw Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat. Trump agreed. Trump's withdrawal from the JCPOA and maximum pressure campaign mirrored Israel's strategy. The U.S. Embassy moved to Jerusalem, and recognition of the Golan Heights cemented the partnership. In 2025, U.S.-Israeli coordination peaked. Joint planning for the airstrikes was widely reported. Netanyahu praised Trump's historic decision, framing it as a defense of civilization. Critics questioned whether U.S. policy served American or Israeli interests. The alliance blurred lines between partnership and shared offensive action. The region's fate was shaped by this powerful axis. Trump's America First promise was to end endless wars and focus on home. The 2025 airstrikes contradicted that pledge, sparking debate within his base. The administration argued the strikes were a short, decisive act to prevent a larger war. Many supporters saw this as strong leadership, not a broken promise. Others felt betrayed, accusing Trump of repeating the interventionism he once condemned. The contradiction exposed a core tension isolationist rhetoric versus hawkish action. Was this America first, or another forever war? The answer divided Trump's coalition. The cost of action and inaction was now painfully clear. The nation wrestled with what it truly wanted from its leaders. The US-Iran conflict sent shockwaves worldwide. European allies condemned the strikes, warning of regional chaos and a new refugee crisis. Anti-war protests erupted globally. Oil prices soared as Iran targeted Saudi facilities and threatened shipping lanes, fueling inflation and economic instability. A humanitarian crisis unfolded as civilians fled conflict zones, straining neighboring countries. Russia and China condemned the US, vetoing resolutions and deepening global divides. The conflict became a proxy for larger geopolitical rivalries. Middle Eastern nations found themselves on the front lines or caught in the crossfire. Sectarian tensions deepened, hopes for stability faded. The world faced a new multipolar order. More contentious, less predictable. The dream of peace seemed further away than ever. After weeks of escalation, a ceasefire was brokered through back-channel diplomacy. The world exhaled as the immediate threat of all-out war receded. Trump claimed victory. Iran claimed resilience. The truce halted military actions, with talk of new negotiations on nuclear and regional issues. Skepticism ran high. Hardliners on both sides distrusted the deal. Critics argued little had changed. Iran's nuclear knowledge remained, and animosity endured. The ceasefire paused the violence but left root causes unresolved. Most believed another crisis was only a matter of time. The peace felt fragile, a temporary lull, not a true resolution. The region remained on edge, waiting for the next spark. Was Trump the architect of the 2025 crisis or a necessary disruptor? Critics say his withdrawal from the Iran deal and maximum pressure campaign led directly to conflict. They argue he ignored expert warnings, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Supporters claim he confronted the real threat, a regime bent on nuclear weapons and regional chaos. They see the JCPOA as flawed, and Trump's actions as overdue realism. The airstrikes, they argue, were a response to decades of Iranian hostility. The debate is unresolved. Reckless escalation or tough necessity? The legacy of Trump's choices will be argued for years. The Middle East remains volatile, shaped by decisions made in Washington and Tehran. The world is left to ponder. Was this crisis inevitable or was it made?